Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively doing a very Baltimore thing today. We're in downtown Baltimore. We're Locust Point. I don't know. I brought Pika here because I figured he could provide clarity on, is this downtown or is it not, or can you walk, and what's walk? I can walk to Fort McHenry from here, right? So we got that going for us. Yes. How are you, brother?
I'm good.
Chris Pika is here, unmasked for the first time, and we have a guest. And so I said to Pika, come by around noon, and I was a little late getting here. Not like I didn't live downtown for 20 years to know about traffic. We're at LP Steamers. It's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with Goodwill, Window Nation, and our friends at the Restaurant Association of Maryland. Hence, Miss Hospitality here. The Baltimore Business Journal, she writes about hospitality, and I think of you as like you're out and about, and I figure you're a little bit of an artery to new business, sadly, closing business, transition business, and all that. But your beat is on top of all of this, knowing where to get a good crab cake maybe around town, correct?
Sure. Yeah, I do a lot of restaurant reporting, hotels, tourism, sports business. I'm all over the place.
They call you first.
Yes.
When they're saying, we're opening something here.
Yeah. I think I have the fun beat on
So
the
is
paper.
that where I run into you at grand openings? Is that like our commonality?
I think so, yeah. What was the last time we saw each other?
I saw you at the new Lexington Market.
The new Lexington Market.
Yes, the new Lexington Market was Baltimore Homecoming was going on, too, at the same time.
Yeah.
And they were showing off down there.
Yeah.
It was loud. There was loud music, Pike. Are you familiar with this? Cocktails?
Yes.
Free drinks?
Yes.
Well, at least for a couple hours, they were free. Chris Pika has been my buddy and my kemosabe for a long, long time. And growing up on the other side of the tracks, right? You're on the west side. I'm east side.
Southwest side, yep.
Scott, Calhoun, because Bachman was Ray Bachman, my longtime producer, was a few blocks away from you?
He was in the 300 block. I was in the unit block of South Calhoun, right between Lombard and Hollins. So basically I tell people I was stuck between Union Square on one side and Hollins Market on the other, but that's where I grew up.
And you turned out just fine.
I did.
Baltimore. We met at the Baltimore News American.
Wow. Okay.
1984, we were both interns. He doesn't remember meeting me, but I remember meeting him. He was the one that showed me around where everything was. I distinctly remember running into Mark Hyman that night, who now runs the Merrill Journalism School. Right. My first night, January of 1984, little Nestor, 15 years old, over on South Street. So he and I, we aspired to do what you do, and I think we both did journalism work. Chris went to the dark side. He did PR. Chris, give her your journey, because a lot of people don't know this stuff about you. He rode the bus of Michael Jordan. He's a big shot. Yeah.
I want to hear that story.
See, they all do. They all do.
I worked in sports after I left the News American. I started as a student manager over at Loyola College, now University, where I went to school, and I started in sports information and PR. So I worked in the SID world at Loyola, George Washington, went down to Birmingham to UAB, and then took a detour for 3 years. I was a director of media relations for the Birmingham Barons when Michael Jordan played baseball back in 1994.
He's in the 30 for 30. Don't let him.
Yeah, so went through that, went back to UAB for 4 years, and then I made it to the NFL working for the Saints and the Falcons in PR and website roles for about 6-7 years, and currently now doing the PR work for the Baltimore Catholic League locally, the Pro Football Writers of America, and getting ready to start travels in college football for ESPN, working with Clay Matvick and Rocky Boyman on weekly games on ESPN2 and ESPNU.
I've always wanted this show to turn into like Conference Call, the old CBS show, CAO show in the 80s, where you just bring random people together and eat crab cakes at LP Steamers and talk about making the city better. You've been on Making the City Better and a beat for we're opening a place. You said to me, I said, what are you working on? Well, there's a new place over McHenry Row, which is like 10 feet away.
Right. Yeah.
I guess I think of places like LP Steamers, and when I was thinking about, I'm going to do a crab cake tour, and I'm going to go to places and try their crab cake, and I'll never run out of places to go, right? And I thought every LP Steamers, every Captain Larry's, you should go straight up Ford Avenue, make a right turn, then we go past Mother's, and like through the city, there are hundreds of places that serve crab cakes, but behind every one of these are great people. There's an incredible story we're going to tell here in the third hour about the family and the founder of LP Steamers and the delicious smell. You know how I know this place was legit? I go back to the bathroom and I came out, and there's actually wash sinks in the basin of the bar. That's a real crab house, Pika. You
Yes.
know this, being a
Yep.
Baltimore
Yep.
guy, right?
Yep.
So for businesses like this and new businesses start up, they call you and they're like, hey, we're going into business. What do people need to know? What's a common thing that you would say talking to business owners in Baltimore right now?
For a restaurant that's
Sure.
going into business, I feel like having a really good idea, a clear idea of your concept is super important. The people who have like some really unique idea are usually the ones who do well because they're filling a niche that, hasn't been filled
The
before.
Snowball Gals a block away from here?
Yeah, I
Ice
love
Queens,
them. I
Ice
love them.
Queens, there you go.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
a niche.
They're New Orleans style too in Baltimore, which takes some bravery to open.
Do they put cream on the top?
They
Did
do.
do
Yeah,
something?
they
do.
do. Yeah, they do. it
That's
regular.
Hawaiian,
Yeah.
man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really good though.
Oh,
Have you
I
been over
stood
there?
line. Yeah,
Yeah.
come on, I'm from Baltimore. Of course I've been down there, I've
Maybe
never,
I'll stop
I've never
by.
cracked a crab here. I've bent my elbow with some beers here before.
Right.
I've had a salad here, and I think I had 10. I just eating crabs and sitting down eating crabs. I only do that with Pika on park benches in Baltimore, right?
That's true.
That's what he's a Conrad's man, right? So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. He's got
Conrad.
his places. But so for you with new business popping up on the back end of the pandemic, this whole concept of coming and sitting here with people I like and talking about making the city better, the plague really changed so many things. Changed, erased businesses, but also. I got Vince Sharp's coming a little while from now from Mind Grub because Todd couldn't come, but the Mind Pub's down. The people come in and take over what used to be Saunier and say, we're going to do something else in that space. And you talk to dreamers all day,
Yeah.
right? Literally, right?
Yeah. That's the thing, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was so worried that we were just going to see a total loss of our restaurants, but I think, it's an industry that draws people who have big dreams, and we're just going to keep seeing that. I've been covering so many restaurants that are opening or people with ideas for restaurants that they want to open, and it really hasn't slowed down, so that's great to see.
And we've seen plenty of that down here in Locust Point. I mean, there's
Yeah.
plenty of places that have changed over here in the last 12 months, and some very neat and unique spaces. Everybody talks about what's going on in Harbor East and Atlas, and obviously that's a big story. But I think the other story is as Nestor and I have been, we're from here, the corner bar restaurant that we all knew growing up at the places you walk to. You still see that going on here in traditional spaces, and especially in this neighborhood. I think it's great.
Doing this brewery thing, and it was really inspired by Hugh Sisson, who had the original Sissons down on Cross Street, which would have been a place where a guy like you and me would have met each other for a beer, because it was sort of halfway, right? And there was always the pit beef stand out, at night, and Turner's was there with the holographic pictures. And by the way, Mother's Dave, he met his wife. She was a bartender at Turner. I had her on the show down in Mother's. I mean, it's really an incredible, small-to-more thing that happens in all these little places. But what the next life is, and breweries have become something certainly that my wife and I have been into a lot of these different places. But there's another niche. I'm going to Checker Spot later today, right? So there's another thing we have here. Things that didn't exist. Crab asses have been here forever, but evolving. I had a crab egg roll the other day. I mean, just sort of creativity that comes from I'm going to do something different, as you said, right?
Right. Yeah. You were able to get a crab egg roll. I feel like those are always sold out. They're so they had that
They need to make more.
phase, right?
It's like these people that make brisket and they run out at 3 PM. I'm like, come on, man.
It's like the hottest commodity around. Yeah.
So on the hospitality side and opening places here in the city and bringing people back to the city, I had Jane Miller on before she retired, and she's had this mantra, and she probably would have it with you whenever you sit down and talk to her about it. It's we need to talk about Baltimore and frame Baltimore up in a positive way. There's plenty of people that aren't indigenous to here, or they've moved out to the county and they say, I'm not coming back in unless the Orioles are on a 10-game winning streak, or unless Paul McCartney's in town, or unless that Billy Joel concert, or whatever, the Springsteen. And then I see and talk to people, and I know you talk to people every day, which is why I wanted to bring you on. Max Weiss is coming on a little later on from Baltimore Magazine. We're going to talk about Best of Baltimore here at LP Steamers today. But the Royal Farms Arena being a centerpiece that he and I, and look, we both love the arena, right? We're going to cry when we walk in there and it's not the same as it was. For guys like you and not a lot of people, but we love that place.
Love it for sports. I mean, that's, to see the Blast and the Clippers in there and see basketball events. I mean, the history of what they've been able to do with the arena and everything around it. And I'm excited to see what this group does, what that turns into, and what the sort of the neighborhood around it that needs a little bit of help too.
Well, you
which
mentioned
that turns
vision,
into.
right? Like I've talked to these folks, and I know you were there at the press conference.
Yeah.
The vision there is, look, we're not getting an NBA team, we're not getting an NHL team, but what can we get? We can get Springsteen, we can get concerts, we can get whoever's on tour next year, the Coldplay, whatever it is, and this alone will, on those nights, help businesses, help Amici's, help LP Steamers, help all parts of the city.
Yeah.
And I think we see that when Garth Brooks comes to town, when Paul McCartney, that is still something that I know they have a vision for, to make it, hey, we're not going to play a lot of hockey games here or whatever, but we're going to have concerts here, and we're going to build it for that. And I know that that's a little bit of the part of the vision that's going to be an awakening for guys like Pike and I that have been going there since Clippers games in 1973, literally, and Harlem Globetrotters and circuses with Ringling Brothers and wrestling matches, all the things we've gone there. That first day you go in there, it's going to be different. We're going to say, well, how's it going to be different? Well, it's built for Chloe, who's 20, not for Chris and Ness, who are pushing 60, right? Like and I think what's going to get Chloe down there as a 20-year-old over the next 20 years, if it's not a baseball game, what's that space that had Led Zeppelin, Frank Sinatra, Elvis, Dylan, what's it going to have over the next 15 years? And you talk to these folks and challenge them, which I think we need more reporters to say, all right, what are you guys doing? Let's talk about what this is going to be. And I know they're dumping a lot of money into it in a way that Chris and I haven't seen in our lifetime.
$200 million, I think, is the price tag.
What do you expect?
What do I expect? I expect to see, they started off strong with the Springsteen announcement. I know they have Pharrell Williams, who's an investor now, so he's apparently going to be helping to book artists there as well. I think they definitely want to draw in, like you're saying, those bigger names and get people downtown and get them staying in the hotels, get them going to the restaurants, and that's really the vision there. But it definitely is going to take a lot of work. When I was over there for the groundbreaking, there was water just dripping down from the ceiling. I took a video of the leak. If
they would have let me in appropriately, like when we killed Hammerjacks, because I emceed that proceeding.
Yeah.
If they brought me down to the arena, I'd say, you know what? I just want to ride the press elevator one more time to remember just how slow it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
From the ground up, it literally... It was like a Flintstones thing where they went and got monkeys on the cranes and they would crank you. You know what I mean? Like,
Really
it
old school.
literally took 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And after a game, to think about leaving, I was young. But Jimmy Jackson and George Taylor couldn't walk 5 flights straight down. But the place, nothing really had been done. They changed the facade back in the 80s, Chris. You remember that? They put the glass in the front, and they moved the box offices. The box offices were always, it was an old school civic center with front box offices. Debbie Rondo will remember that. But they changed it in 1981, 82, and there hasn't been, in my professional career of covering nothing but blast games, skipjack games, all that, there's been zero investment because nobody ever saw it as a place. And Frank Remish has done an unbelievable job. But seeing money get dumped in and saying, all right, somebody cares. People care about Baltimore. And I think that's what I want to point at. And I think you see that every day in the business you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of people who care about the city and want to make it better and want to bring people in. So,
what have you been writing about? You've been writing about Oriole Fever a little bit too, right?
I have. Yeah, I was actually at
He's
the
got
game.
it. He's one of the customers.
Yep.
Okay.
He's one of the buyers.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I have 13 game season tickets, but I've been down to probably 4 or 5 other games beyond that, just to go.
I look up
Yeah.
every 3 days, and he's at a game, and with his wife, and that's the reason you moved back to Baltimore.
Was one of the reasons. Yeah, I just had to be able to have that and be in a major league city and enjoy that. And I grew up going to games at Memorial, going back to 71. So, for me, baseball, I enjoy it. It's a great night out. It's good to see people back in the ballpark. It's good to see people downtown and enjoying it, giving people a reason to come in for the weekend, even though they're, maybe less coming from New York and Boston, hopefully soon, in Toronto, like I did the other night. But it's nice to have those crowds back in and filling the restaurants and the bars around that, because as he and I got older, you start to see when you're a kid, you just see the ballpark. When you get to be an adult, you're going, well, okay, I got to go here. I want to grab a beer. I want to grab a sandwich. I want to do, something else before I go to the ballpark. And you have those
It's an
options.
experience.
Right?
Yeah.
It's more than just the 3 hours.
The
at the park.
experience for me as a kid was taking the 22 bus through Highlandtown and going to G&A and getting a hot dog, jumping on the bus with my dad. That was the whole. It wasn't tailgating. It wasn't girls. It wasn't music. It wasn't Pickles Pub. It wasn't. It was keeping score. Sometimes on the bottom of my shoe, collecting cards. That's not why people are going to Orioles games right now, right? And the Orioles, as a business, and Chris speaks to baseball, right? They need to figure this, like what is going to bring people back. And Chris is one of my favorite people because he left Baltimore, and you could live anywhere you want doing what you do. He and his wife were living in Atlanta. They lived in New Orleans in the city when he worked for the Saints. You chose to be here. You chose to move 8 blocks from LP Steamers and live in this neighborhood and come back home again at a time when not a lot of people were choosing. Not a lot of people were saying, I want to take the Baltimore Civic Center, which Phil Jackman used to call the municipal ruins, and invest in it. But you see people every day. Port Covington, when you drive by, there are people that believe in Baltimore. And at the Business Journal, you're trying to tell that story to some degree, right? You have to believe in Baltimore to be here.
I think we tell it all the time. Yeah, absolutely. We're doing a series right now. We're working on one for later this summer about downtown Baltimore and everything that's going on there, which obviously includes the convention center, the arena,
Harbor Place.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot going on over there. So hopefully we're going to see more people coming back downtown. Once a lot of that gets done, but.
Well, the Orioles
definitely
are part
the Orioles.
Of it right now.
Yeah. I mean, I was there on Saturday, and the energy was incredible. Just so many people just breaking out in chants, and we're actually on track. I mean, we've already surpassed the attendance from last year. We're beyond that now. I think it was a little under 800,000 last year. We're at 820.
I wish
this
they
year
were
so
more
far.
forward and honest. I mean, and look, I've had my problems with them and honesty, which is like really at the core. You were in PR on the other side, Chris. How many of those $40 packages have they sold? For these 2 months, they sold the 40. I mean, like that would really be cool if they sold 5,000 of those. It's $40 for a month to come down to the games, right? Like
a lot of other clubs have done that too. A lot of other teams, because of the standing room only.
I'm just thinking for you and your wife, dude, and no offense to you're already spending the money on the 13-game plan, but they're in the pennant race right now.
Yeah.
You and your wife could give them $80 right now and go to all the games in September in the pennant race, and you live downtown. My friends Ken and Meg live in Federal Hill. They love the Orioles. Agent Orange, shout out, Kenny Ball game. They were the ones going when the team stunk and paying the $14 for the beers, right? The last 5 years. I'm thinking right now, if you are a fan and you're engaged, however you feel about Trey Mancini or how you feel about Gunnar what they need to do to win, where they are, where they're positioned right now, I would think the cost of entry is for you living in Locust Point or you live more in South Baltimore, more Federal Hills where you are. But to walk to a game and be a part of it, they've been more welcoming in that. And I like to know that a lot of people are doing that because I want to see it stimulated. This is it's go time for them.
It is.
From an organization standpoint.
I mean, to give you an idea, because I've got a 13-game plan, I get a discount on tickets. You get a discount, and it's a discount even on the Ticketmaster fees and everything on it. So to go to the Oriole game the other night, I said, I'm going to go Monday night because I don't think, Tuesday or whatever night it rained. And I said, let me go check the tickets. And my tickets upstairs were $22 plus the fees, so it cost me $28 to go. Okay, to sit in the fifth row of the upper deck where I normally sit, and sit out there. And the weather was good until it started to rain, but they won the ball game, stuck around, and hung out on the club level. And they've done some things. They're doing things for season ticket holders and trying to make sure people are happy and being engaged, and their salespeople are engaged, and their retention folks are engaged. So it's good to see it.
I love that you're seeing it that way. I mean, Chris has been around the world, right? I mean, Chris and I have been a bunch of Super Bowls together. He's done all of these amazing things, but you're still unjaded to the point where you reach in your pocket, you buy tickets. Sometimes maybe you get a freebie or somebody takes care of you. You're overworking. He still works in the industry with ESPN and different places. But the mere fact that you are invested and that you're doing it and you're seeing it from that scope, can you tell me what you like about it? If I go to a game with you and don't bitch too much about the team or Angelo's, and we're sitting there, what do you like about the experience right now?
Well, to me, at the end of the day, it's baseball. Okay, you're out in the ballpark with a beautiful view of downtown in a 7 o'clock at night, if it's not 95 degrees and super humid, with a beer and a hot dog, and the experience of watching the game and talking to people around you. And that's the thing about Baltimore that my wife and I talk about. My wife talks about it constantly. When we were in Atlanta, you couldn't have conversations with people at a restaurant like this generally, or at the Braves game. People sort of stayed to themselves. It was more sort of a southern thing. Here, you talk to people that are sitting next to you in the stands, and you start kind of having conversations.
Hey, I'm from Ellicott City. Where are you from?
Right. Where'd you go to school and all that? And here, it's a lot more welcoming and always has been, and it reminds me a lot of living in New Orleans. I've told you this several times that New Orleans and Baltimore are very, very similar in neighborhood identities. Where did you go to high school? People know everybody. It's the closest thing to Baltimore that I found where I've lived. And so I just enjoy that part of it. Okay, yeah, the food prices and all that, and you do get a break for being a season ticket holder, whether it's 25 or 30%. It's
Somebody's going to
helpful.
pay for Adley Rutschman eventually.
Right. I mean, yeah, we know the prices are going to go up, but, for 2 tickets upstairs, it's about $600 and change for the 2 seats for the 13 games, because I took a midweek plan. I didn't do Sundays or 28 games.
Well, what somebody said to me, Amari Brown wrote this the other day, the concerts for him are his vacation. Right. So $600, you think, what would I do with $600? No offense to Ocean City. I'm going next week. I'll be in Salisbury with the mayor next week. But what would you do with $600 for 13 date nights with your wife? Or she doesn't feel like going, you call your buddy Nestor, and and I come down, and
Right.
we throw back a few over at Mother's on the way over, or whatever we do, right? I mean, those are the experiences that I think the plague took that away from everybody.
Yeah.
And that would be for dining out, sitting in a restaurant, eating crabs here at LP Steamers like people are doing. Man, it was taken away from us. Chloe didn't even have a prom, man. She didn't even have a proper graduation. She's a COVID kid, right?
Yeah.
From that class. So things were taken away from us, and I think dreamers are trying to put that back into the city in some way. And even if it's just half dozen crabs and a beer or two here, right?
Yep. But I want to ask, what is your favorite story right now? What's something about Baltimore that you really, really like, that you've covered or been around that people should know about?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, just like in terms of a theme, I think it's the resilience of the restaurant industry, which is what I cover all the time. And,
They're still here.
I think they're still here. Like I said, I was worried they were going to go away. I mean, and we have had a lot of closures, which has been really tough, but it's just really good to see people are still enthusiastic and still want to keep trying and still want to keep opening places. So,
Well, your gig was kind of morbid for a little while, right? I mean, but when places are closing, you're the one writing about it. I mean, it's like an obituary for a business, and then you say, all right, so I pointed out Sonia as an example, up the street, or Bicycle, which is another place my wife and I loved 15 years ago, that something else then goes into that space. Captain Larry's, wasn't that the old, didn't it have another name?
Before my time.
I mean, some of the places that were here, I think about what it used to be, or I talked about Hugh Sisson earlier. I mean, it's Riley's Oyster, right? It's that space that I hung out in 30 years ago, and it's not Riley's Oyster. It's going to be something else again. But when people come in with these visions and ideas, that is what keeps the city fresh and vibrant. Having a chef that's doing something nobody else is doing, or a snowball, New Orleans style that Pike and his wife certainly appreciate,
Yeah, and I think the nimbleness of everyone here during the course of the pandemic, figuring out how can we serve outside, how can we keep our people employed. I think that's a great story of how they were able to keep people, Barracudas down the street had the fire, and they've kept their people employed, and they've had to go inside a church and do what they've done. And there's a million stories like that.
I went
here.
to a church for beer the other night in Butcher's Hill.
Yeah, I've seen that place.
You've been over there?
Ministry?
Yeah.
Yeah, that place is great.
So I decided to do this brewery thing. My wife knows way more about it than me. She's like, I want to go to the place with the big chandelier in the farm. And I'm like, all right, we'll go up there. I think it's called Inverness, right? I think. And then she's like, there's a place downtown with like a church thing. Are you going there? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that's the Ministry of Brewing. And sure, I look it up. The ingenuity to take over spaces. And again, you're the one they call. Look, I've seen space. I remember when Ed Hale called me. Ed said, we're going to build a port down here. We're going to bring boats in. We're going to have cruises. We're in Canton. We're going to do this in Canton. I'm like, all right, Ed, whatever you say. So I went down Old Port East when Ed had his shorter building there. It's still there. And he put me on a table, and they had a whole drawing, a whole 3D thing that you would see in the lobby, right, of the big building that was going to have the Blue Cross, and it's going to have First Mariner Bank and the tower and the penthouse, and then all of a sudden the next thing I see, Ed's like, come on over here, get a hard hat. He took me up in the building when the building was sort of like just concrete. It was like a naked building with cages in the middle with the hard hats.
You're going up in the sardine
Took
can
me
elevator.
up in the 20th floor, the wind's blowing me. Ed's like, come on over here. I'm like, dude, I'm not getting near the edge. So when you go in and see the vision, and now I always say to my wife when I'm over there, we're shopping, I'm like, Ed saw this, Ed dreamed this, and Ed's not a part of it now, right? But Ed was the pioneer, taking the arrows, coming over the mountain on that project. And when I see things from the beginning like that, it gives me such an appreciation. When I sit there with Ed and Ed said, see that park down there where they have all those concerts and TMD throws all – he said, I saw that. I looked at it and I saw Fort McHenry from there and I said, we're never building anything on there. I want to make it a park, and that was Ed's vision, right? So all these little things that happen, people call you with it. The homecoming people are wonderful about what they want to do, right? And I think all the dreamers, they want to get in touch with the Business Journal and have you – Port Covington. How are you feeling about Port Covington at this point? I know it doesn't have clients, but it certainly is something to see. And I think if you get off a plane and you go over there, you'd say that's going to be something. Maybe it takes a little longer, but you've been on that from the beginning, right?
Well, that's my colleague Melody Simmons does a lot of that. But, yeah, we've been on it, and now you're seeing the buildings actually going up. I was surprised to see that, driving just the other day. It looks really
I remember when they
way
built
different.
the Sun Building over there.
Yeah.
And South Hanover Street over by that way has new construction of apartments and condos and all that. I mean, that's transforming that neighborhood, adjacent to it. I mean, that's great for South Baltimore.
Well, here's a little history lesson, and Pika knows this because we were together at the Evening Sun for a moment, or excuse me, the News American for a moment. The late 80s at the Evening Sun, every Stedman column in 86, 87, 88, into 89 was that stadium needs to be in Port Covington. And I think John probably had a developer in his ear because I don't think John really knew now that I'm reading it later, I don't know that he really knew when he was getting pushed by somebody who had interests, right? But John went to his grave thinking they made a massive, massive mistake in building Camden Yards. He thought Port Covington was the natural place for D.C. It was on the water. It would become its own thing, right, down by the port. I'm talking 1988, 89. Yeah. May seem like a long time to you, but to Pike and I, it was a minute and a half ago Def Leppard was playing, right? So, but that could have been the stadium. The stadium, the Redskins could have been in Laurel at one point, right? The baseball stadium could have been built in Columbia to share Baltimore and Washington because there was always a perception that Washington had more money for the baseball team, right? So all these things happen and you get the seedling of it. But to see Port Covington go from nothing to something, it is amazing. It's a Baltimore positive story.
Well, and speaking of stadiums, did you see that they're considering maybe a soccer stadium there, a soccer arena?
Yeah,
in Port
some sort of.
Covington?
I think it's part of the Under Armour. I think they were doing something they can showcase their athletes, but also have it as a neighborhood, a place for kids to play, or youth teams, or maybe even high schools to play over there. I think it's a great idea.
Well, I feel like 10 minutes ago I was over at Rye when they're opening it, and it's the only thing over there. And you see this beautiful barn house being built. It was kind of awkward, ships pulling up, unloading cargo, right? Unloading people for Bermuda and whatever. And now it looks appropriate, right? When you see it in the context of, that was just one thing that was there. And it was there alone for a good couple, 2-3 years, right? Like when you had events, I'm sure you drove over there for various things.
Yeah.
Now you start to see the maturity of the area, and I think you get more of a buy-in from people. That when things start opening over there, people will want to go over there and sniff it out. And like they do National Harbor, which has become really an amazing thing that we featured on the Crab Cake Tour last year. So what's your big hope for Baltimore before I let you get out of here?
Oh, man, my big hope for Baltimore. I'd like to see, people coming back downtown. Our office is downtown on Charles Street, and it has been really, really empty in the months since we've gone back to the office. So I'd love to see people back down there. I'd love to see Harbor Place become something that is locally driven.
Yeah.
That's my wish for Harbor Place, I guess.
That I drive in from the county and Pike and I meet down at the harbor like we used to.
Yeah.
Get some fried dough, some good beef or something like that.
Yeah. That I think that desperately needs to happen for the city.
Little LP steamers carry out down there. What do you think?
I think so.
That would
I'll
be
talk
great.
to William about that later on. Amanda Yeager's here. She's from the Baltimore Business Journal. Chris Pika is the familiar face and voice of a lot of fun that we have here at Baltimore Positive. You can follow him at Blog and Tackle. And are you blogging and tackling college football? What is
a little bit of everything right
mojo?
now. Just a little bit of pro football, a little college football, and just kind of generally what's going on here. A lot of about the Orioles and kind of what's going on here in town and places we're visiting in town and seeing. And
Catholic League, give me a little primer on that for the sports.
52nd year of the Baltimore Catholic League coming up. It's the high school league that encompasses Calvert Hall, Loyola, Mount St. Joe.
The schools I couldn't afford.
St. Maria Goretti out in Hagerstown, John Carroll.
Schools they wouldn't let me into.
But a long history of basketball going back into the 60s, actually, in the league itself.
I almost went to McDonough once.
Once?
No, I went out there and took. Yeah, and I told you a story. I went out, took the test, and did all that. My 6th grade teacher thought I was gifted, and so I went out and took the Iowa test out there, and then my parents said, "Dude, you're gonna be on a bus an hour and a half in the morning, and an hour and a half in the afternoon, and there might not even be any girls." And I'm like, "No girls? Ain't going there, So
I went Mount St. Joe. I mean, that was no girls, and out just
look
at
at
the
how you
line.
turned out.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I got to ask her one question though.
Yeah.
Since you've been here, and how long have you actually been in Baltimore?
Going on 10. It'll be 10 years next year.
Silver Spring girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Grew up in Silver Spring. Moved here in 2013.
Okay.
She's from Maryland.
Right. So.
Yeah.
So
You
now,
turn-
since you've been to all these places and all these openings and had people talk to you, what's your favorite old school Baltimore haunt? What, like, if you're going to go for
man.
wings and
This question.
beer or something?
Yeah,
what
plug a
do you?
place. Give a free plug. Come
Let's see. Well, I just moved over to Highlandtown, and I really like going to Venice Tavern. Have you been there?
No, I wanna go now.
Yeah, it's. I think it's the longest running bar. It opened right after Prohibition was lifted, so it's been there since for decades
I'm gonna
and
have a
decades.
beer with you there.
Yeah, let's go. It's
For
a cool.
being
It's a
our guest on
basement
the show,
bar.
yeah.
Yeah, it's real old school.
Okay.
So
What about you?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of places here. I mean, there's a place for just up the street, Barflies, that love the pizza there. It's one of my favorite places, but it's very walkable, and that's one thing we like about this part of South Baltimore is we can walk to LP Steamers, we can walk to the places that are along here and Captain Larry's and all that. So we enjoy that, but I also enjoy places like Fadley's for crab cakes and being able to go into the old, about to be, done.
The old New Market.
Yeah, the old New Market, right. I mean, they're just wonderful, great places that you could just sort of sneak into that are sneaky good and being able to talk to people and be able to talk to the owners and the servers and just kind of enjoy something that's, is locally made. Row House Tavern's right by us, and they've just changed ownership again. There are little places like that you just kind of enjoy sliding into on a Tuesday night. Hey, I don't want to cook dinner. Let's go here. And that's what we like about being able to do that.
You just gave me an idea, man, for something next year. Because I did 30 crab cakes in 30 days last year for my 30th anniversary. 31 added breweries this year, right? I got thirsty. Yes, I've had beer 11 days in a row. My wife last night took a crab cake back from the Crab Queen. She's like, "Hey, you want a beer?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not an alkie. Stop. No beer at home for the month. I mean, I'm going to Checker Spot when I leave here, and they're going to offer me beer here at LP Steamers. For me, with special places and going and eating my favorite foods and stuff, I've never had a Bertha's mussel.
Okay.
I've never been in the Swallow at the Hollow.
I
I have never been to Poe's grave properly.
Okay.
I have only been to the top of the shot tower once when I was a Cub Scout. I might have been a Weeblo, but I don't talk about those years. There's a lot of Baltimore,
Being a tourist in your
The
own hometown.
hometown tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
where Gwynn Oak was. I don't really know where the park. My mother used to go to the amusement park there and stuff like that. So there are hidden gems of Baltimore that even. I've never had a Bertha's mussel. I've walked by there a billion times. Never thought about it. The tour for me, the cool part, and I told the mayor of Salisbury this, and I didn't mean to be flippant with him. I'm like, no offense, dude. I've driven through Salisbury 1,000 times. I only stop to go to the bathroom because why would I stop? I'm on the way to Ocean City. You're passing through. And my wife and I last weekend, just going to Western Maryland, we got off of 70. We took all back roads in every single direction, finding pie shops, finding a lot of Confederate flags, unfortunately, but seeing things we would never have seen before and experiencing these things and diving in from the outside is something he and I don't have.
Yeah.
So when I say to somebody, if you're in the city, you like broccoli, they'll be like, yeah. I'm like, go to Ekabin and get broccoli. Get it carry out. You eat it out of the box. Don't take it home, but you stop by.
And they're going in up a street here.
You like breakfast, go to the Ovenbird Bakery. I was blessed enough to have him on the program when I was over at Black Swan, which is another great place. So I'm finding all these great places as a business conduit to my sports part of this, but there's still, I've been here my whole life, and there's undiscovered things, including a crab cake from LP Steamers. I've been in here, but I've never had the crab cake here.
Right.
So part of the discoveries, you never stop discovering the city. But from the outsider view and writing about it from business, I mean, it's like an open tapestry here. It really is. It's like a blank canvas as I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me know if you do that tour because there's still places I need to go
Venice,
to. Also,
what is this?
Venice Tavern.
Okay.
It's a little basement bar in Highlandtown.
I love it already.
Real old
I love it
school.
already.
There you go.
I
Yeah.
love it already.
All
Look
right.
at Pika's
All right,
eyes lit up.
I'm
How
all
could I
for
not
that.
have heard about this? How's the girl from Silver Spring telling the old timers here? Amanda Yeager's with the Baltimore Business Journal. Chris Pika's Blog and Tackle. We are at LP Steamers for being our guest. They're having a chance to win $10,000. Maryland Lottery. We're giving away the Show Me tickets. Chloe is already. Chloe's on to her second ice water, man. You know it's hot down here in Locust Point. It's also brought to you by our friends at Goodwill. I have my Goodwill truck. I had this. They give me props.
That's
It's soft. It's a toy. It's like
like an
hand-
eraser or
I don't even-
sponge.
It just reminds me of the wheels on the bus go right. That's Latrobe. I didn't do that this week. Those pictures weren't real. Goodwill, our friends at Window Nation, as well as our friends at the Restaurant Association of Maryland. They'll be hitting you up for Restaurant
Sure.
Week because that's
Yeah.
what they do.
Yeah.
Restaurant Week's one of them. We just had it in the city. We're going to have it all over the state the 16th to the 25th of September. And there's nothing more pro-business than Restaurant Week, right? You can give a shout-out for that, right?
I do love Restaurant Week. I've got to make my list of places I'm going to go to. So
I got to go
thanks
to the
for the
Venice
reminder.
Tavern. Yeah, people used to not talk about Highlandtown like it was purgative, like being from Dundalk. You know, I'm from Canton, Upper Canton, and I'm like, it's like the Chaucer. He's in Highlandtown.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Canton. I said to him, two Dundalk guys getting together in Highlandtown and calling it Canton. I mean, come on, man. So when you say you're from Highlandtown, I took my first guitar lessons at Yeager's Music.
Oh, okay.
Do you know about Yeager's Music?
I did know about it, but
Because your
there's
last name is
Yeager as well.
Right.
Yeah. But
John Shand on the second floor taught me how to play the Camptown races. Oh, the Camptown races.
Yeah.
Sing
Yeah.
this song, do that. Like Roy Clark. And I bought my 45 of Steve Miller Jet Airliner on Capitol Records right there. I got my Kiss Kiss Destroyer tablature for how to play it on guitar. I can't play the guitar still. But Stella's, Epstein's, my first communion shoes.
All right.
Every Saturday morning of my life with Mr. Rivera, who still, God rest his soul, delicious pizza. It's now a Mexican character. It's now Umberto's, now a hair salon.
Okay.
But Mr. Rivera, oh my God, Chris, we get off the 22 bus, and his mood depended on how Jim Palmer pitched that night. Audio, I know like audio. El Viva Baseball. He was a real Italian dude, man. He was awesome. His pizza was delicious. God bless Mr. So you live in a Stabil's. Stabil's was the country music capital of Baltimore, right on Eastern Avenue, right at Grundy.
Yeah. Okay.
I got my first underage beer. I was 17 at the Surf Club. It's above the bakery now. That's the Honduran Bakery.
Okay.
Right next to Kelly's bar. They never let me in there. Mr. Kelly was strict. You know, he was. So, but I loved Highlandtown, and you live there. You live in a part that Enoch Pratt. You live near the Zappa statue.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I love it there. There's a lot happening.
Highlandtown's
So
coming back to life.
it is.
It really
is.
is. Well, I'm gonna come over and get a bowl of ramen and go into a basement bar. And what do they serve there? Peanuts? Is it like that? What do they serve?
As far as I know, no food. I mean, beer.
It's beer.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I like
So-
it already.
Get a Matthews pizza or something beforehand.
There,
and-
see, that's
Come
BYO
over.
food. Is that what you're
Yes.
telling me?
yes.
Yeah.
I did that at Ministry. I took Ministry Brewing, day 2 of the tour, day 3 of the tour. It was a night that Alicia Keys played. Mm-hmm. My wife and I went to, I want to make sure I get the name right. Hold on, because if I screw this up, because I don't want to do it wrong. I don't want to get the name wrong because the crab cake was great. And I was right. Soul Cuisine with a K. Kuisine.
Okay.
It's at Station North.
Okay.
It's right where the KFC always was on North
Yes.
Avenue, a block east of there, just a
Okay.
block east, and it's carry out. I mean, you know, it's too small to like sit down. Highly recommended. Take the mayonnaise off the sandwich. Delicious crab cake, but I BYO'd that. I grabbed it, and we went to Ministry, and I had the Ministry beer with the Soul Cuisine crab. So BYO's a thing.
Absolutely. It's kind of nice to choose what you want. You know,
Down
what do you want to bring in?
Baltimore. She taught me about a place in Highlandtown. Give it up, Amanda.
All
I think you did
right,
great.
yeah.
Amanda Yeager, Baltimore Business Journal, Chris Pika. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery, Window Nation, our friends at Goodwill, and the Restaurant Association of Maryland. We're at LP Steamers. I'm not going to get a beer until I get to Checker Spot Brewery because I'm trying to be good. I've only had 4 French fries on this tour. They made me eat them. Then they brought me calamari fries, so I did that at Rocky Gap. I haven't gotten on the scale since the trip started. I did have ice cream for breakfast this morning because I got this pie in Pennsylvania.
Sounds great.
I got Eaton Park chili in Latrobe. I'm eating, man. It's an eating month. We're back for more from LP Steamers. I'm going to get a crab cake. And Max Weiss is going to be here soon talking about Best of Baltimore. I may have Pika stick around to argue with Max. Stay with us.